A special meeting of the Transportation Mobility Infrastructure Commission to order. I will be a host this evening. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Item 1A, presentations of the public. Being there's no public, we'll go to 1B, communications by the commission. Commissioners have any communications? Being none. Consideration of approval of the minutes from the July 10th meeting. Seeking a motion to accept the minutes as written.
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any nays? Consider it passed. Consideration of I Street Bridge Replacement Project Update, Mr. McCoy.
Mr. Chair, members of the Commission, Jason McCoy, Supervising Transportation Planner. The item before you is an update on the I Street Bridge Replacement Project. For the past 8 months, the project development team in the city of Sacramento, as well as the city of West Sacramento, and the project consultant have been working to develop the criteria and the selection process for selecting the architect for the I Street Bridge Replacement Project. The staff report that I provided outlines that entire process as well as the timeline. We do have a date for selection of the architect. That date is October 31st, so that would be Halloween. In the staff report, I identified that the contract with the selected architectural firm is going to be confirmed on October 30th by the City of Sacramento, who are the lead agency on the project. And Congresswoman Doris Matsui will make the announcement in the morning of October 31st at Matsui Waterfront Park over in Sacramento, right across the river, near the area of the I Street Bridge. So at that point, you'll be able to see some of the conceptual graphics for the I Street Bridge. Should be noted that the concepts were not what was selected, but the architect that was selected. So there were three different concepts that were submitted by each competing architect, and those concepts vary in complexity and in visual representation of what the I Street Bridge could be. If the commission has any questions regarding the staff report, I'm happy to answer those questions.
Questions from the board? Sure.
Will this commission be notified of kind of the particulars of that announcement with Congresswoman Matsui and be able to attend?
You are welcome to attend. I believe that they're going to have speakers from the leadership over in Sacramento. We will have the same. I'm making the assumption that our mayor and or council members will also be attending. I know that all of our executive team has been notified of the announcement. I don't have a specific time. I do know the announcement will occur somewhere between 9 o'clock and 11 o'clock in the morning. I don't have the Congresswoman's schedule detailed yet.
Can we get, as it gets closer and that does get confirmed, can we just have a quick blast so that if it is possible, we can try to attend that?
Yes, certainly.
Anybody else? Reading through it, I had a question, maybe because I'm late to the game. Bottom of the paragraph, first page, part of the Mark Thomas team included an architect. Does that mean that architect is not participating in this project anymore, even though it was part of the initial engineering firm's contract?
That's correct. So this entire process began when Sacktown Magazine had published an opinion piece that mischaracterized the architectural process for the project, stating that the public would not have an opportunity to participate in the architecture, that an iconic structure should be designed, and that we had already gone through the design of the bridge. That was incorrect. We have not even begun that process. However, enough information had been sent out that was incorrect that we felt the need to address it. Congresswoman Matsui had expressed an interest in seeing a design competition. The architect that was selected on the team was invited to participate in that selection process. I'm not at liberty at this point to say who that architect, which architect was selected. We did have a number of respondents to the RFQ that was sent out, the request for qualifications. And in the responses, we received 4 different architectural firms that expressed interest. Of those 4, 3 were shortlisted as meeting the qualifications as outlined in the RFQ. It doesn't mean that they weren't qualified. It means they did not meet the qualifications as expected. And of those 3, there were interviews that were held for each of those firms. There was an ad hoc advisory panel that was put together. That's also described in the staff report. And then we had a selection panel that was made up of council members from each of the cities, as well as Congresswoman Doris Matsui. There was a lot of different graphics that were shown, a lot of questions that were asked, and we had an opportunity as staff to provide some insight as well on details regarding engineering and the process itself. Ultimately, there was one architect that was unanimously selected, and that's the architect that's going to be announced.
Would you say for anybody that maybe was just joining us or not familiar with the project, you're still pretty much on the same projected onboarding of every process as you had originally stated with the magazine, maybe giving misinformation along the way? This is still the process the group was always kind of going to eventually select a architect, to eventually invite the public to participate in any type of level, that this was just always part of the project, and it may have just been, like you mentioned in the report.
That's correct.
Not given the fair opportunity to share.
Right, that is correct. The architect that was on board, Don McDonald Architects, he is well known for some of his other bridge designs. It was always anticipated that the architect would be going out to the public and soliciting input from members of the public. There would be some design charrettes that would be happening, and the actual outreach process was going to be informed both by our outreach consultant, AIM, who's on board, as well as the architects. That process is still continuing. The only difference here is that we have a different architect. We have different design concepts that were presented, and it's just a 6 to 8 month delay that has resulted in this selection. But I think that everybody was impressed with the level of concepts and input that was received by all the competing design firms. And they all had very unique, very different representations of what they felt Sacramento and West Sacramento and the region in general was represented best by in these designs. So it'll be very interesting to see this process continue forward. And we're very confident that we have the very best team in place.
Any other questions, comments, concerns? Thank you, sir. Number 4, consideration of information regarding the transportation grant funding application submitted in 2018. Mr. Doherty.
Good evening, Chair, members of the Commission. Chris Doherty, Senior Analyst with the Public Works Department. The item before you this evening, and we'll pause for a second to give some time to get up on the screen, is a brief overview of the grant applications that the Public Works staff has been involved with since about April of this year. There we go. 2018 has provided us with a lot of opportunities for grants and funding for our transportation projects in the city. And I apologize, this is not coming through very vividly on the screen at this point. And the purpose of tonight's presentation is to kind of give you a brief overview of those 11 applications that we've submitted for these various programs that come to a total of about $12.8 million of a total ask in the last 6 months. The first project is for the SACOG, the Sacramento Area Council of Governments, their regional program. This is the largest regional pot of funding that allows us to build projects in the city. What we've asked for this program this year is the West Capitol Avenue Road Rehabilitation Project, the second phase. We are currently designing from West Capitol Avenue from Jefferson Boulevard all the way to Enterprise for a road rehabilitation project. That project also includes components such as protected bikeways and buffered bike lanes, better pedestrian crossings, and safety enhancements throughout the entire corridor. Currently, the construction is funded through about Harbor Boulevard, so this is seeking to complete the construction all the way to Enterprise. It's about a $4.3 million ask from the program, and I believe we had about $556,000 in local match. If that is funded, which we'll be notified by December of this year, it will probably be added onto the construction schedule of the West Capitol Avenue project, and we'll turn that into about an $8.5 to $9 million project and complete the entire stretch of roadway, which would really be a great thing for the city. The second program is the SACOG Community Design Program. In this program, Public Works teamed up with our Economic Development Department to do various components of the transportation network in the Washington neighborhood. Those components include extending the bike trail from Riverwalk Park all the way up to the boat launch and beyond. And that does coordinate with flood agencies and other agencies, so it's a complicated project for a relatively simple bike trail. It also takes a series of small pedestrian and bike enhancements throughout the Washington corridor. It really kind of creates the connective tissue to make a more holistic, better network of transportation throughout this area. This area is really important because we have the I Street Bridge replacement that you just heard about will be connecting right here, as well as the I Street Bridge, the existing I Street Bridge deck conversion, which will also be connecting to this area. So we have a lot of very large projects, and SACOG, this program is really geared towards transportation investments that help drive the land use that really starts to promote infill and denser downtown land use. Again, this is about a $2.3 million ask, and we had an $850,000 local match for this project. I'll be notified probably on a similar timeline to the regional program, which will be December of this year, maybe a little earlier if things go well. Next, we have the Active Transportation Program. This is a large state program that has kind of two components. One is the state call for projects, and the second is a regional call for projects to SACOG. For this project, we applied for the third phase of the Sycamore Trail. This is the component of that new trail which goes from the south side of West Moor Oaks Elementary School down to the intersection of Park and Stone. This is part of a much larger trail system that we got funding for earlier this year or last year, which is the freeway overpass to connect the two areas of the city over the freeway. And phase one, which starts at Rice Avenue all the way to north up against the rail line all the way down. So if this is funded, we asked for approximately $1 million in construction cost. If this is funded, it will by 2020 to 2021, we'll have completed the entire Sycamore Trail system, phases 1 through 3, through the northern part of the city. Also through SACOG, they have their transportation demand management programs, which really aim to, they're kind of a programmatic approach to curb single occupancy vehicle trips throughout the region. We applied for 2 different funding programs in this. One is their TDM Innovation Program. This is a project we're calling Beyond the Commute, which is really looking to do a citywide travel study to find out what those barriers are for people to choose a different mode of transportation, whether it's walking, biking, transit, or carpooling. We just want to know what those barriers are and how people are moving around. Traditional TDM programs are really kind of focus on commute behavior to and from a 9-to-5 job. This is really looking to see those other use cases, how people are moving around, and what we can do as a city to provide better options in the future. The TDM traditional program, we're also taking an innovative approach. The traditional Safe Routes to School programs that we've been running for about 5 years through the state and regional funding are really limited to public schools that were from kindergarten through 8th grade. High schools were generally exempt, as were private and charter schools. We have taken this approach to use different money to go after those other schools that are not a part of the traditional Safe Routes to School programs, and provide a different curriculum that would be provided to older kids or to private schools that we have several in our area as well. So we are actually just got notification that a staff recommendation for this program was made to SACOG, to the Transportation Committee, which did recommend funding our program. But that has not been confirmed by their board yet. So it's definitely a good indication moving forward, and we are confident in that, but it still could change down the road. This is SACOG's newest program. It's called the Green Region Program. It's their first year of running this type of funding program. And this really gains to bolster zero emission vehicle infrastructure, facilities throughout the region. Our take on this program was to work with the private community, the business community in our city, to build a fairly robust network of level 2 chargers and DC fast chargers. Level 2s are the charge point systems you see outside the building here and are fairly common. The DC fast charging systems are the ones that will charge a car in about 30 minutes. These are the Tesla superchargers, or for the other private operators. Where this is important is we've gone a little bit beyond just the private vehicle here for charging, and are working very closely with goods movement, logistics, and freight operators in the city. We are working with Ryder on this and ChargePoint to see if we can get them to adopt an electric vehicle fleet for those logistics. We're also working with companies like Walmart and IKEA, who have signed on for letters of intent on this as well. So we're really happy with the project that we have moving forward. We'll hear again probably in November, December this year on this project. And on the last project, this is the California Highway Safety and Infrastructure Program, or as we call it, HSIP. This is a program through Caltrans, which is geared really towards traffic safety, and it's a very efficient engineering-style program. We submitted 4 applications for this that really focused on traffic safety and pedestrian safety throughout the city. There were some set-asides for this program that focused just on pedestrian crossings, and we applied for a bunch of those that create the safer traffic calming crossings, mid-block crossings with flashing beacons and things of that nature. We designed several of those through this program, and we'll be hearing back on this within probably by about January of this year. And that concludes my presentation. I'm available for any questions.
Questions from the board?
So I was looking, we have 7 grants applications out. What's kind of our hope to land of those 7?
I think we have 7 different funding programs. We have 11 grants total out there.
Okay, gotcha.
I would say we're pretty confident on several of those programs. Again, we've heard one is already as a staff recommendation. Personally, I think the Green Region Grant is a really innovative and gets into a realm that has not been talked a lot about, and that's that kind of private investment, private company logistics and freight component. So I think we're pretty confident there as well. The active transportation program for the Sycamore Phase 3 at the state level is a highly competitive program. I think we are well poised because we have a relatively small ask, and it's just construction funding, not the design that's already being taken care of. So it's a almost shovel-ready project and easy to fund. So I'm guessing that will probably be funded either through the statewide call or the SACOG call. Both applications have been submitted already. I think we have a very competitive community design application for the Washington infrastructure pieces. So I think we're, all in all, we try not to I don't say waste our time, but do applications that we don't think are going to be successful. So we work very closely as staff to really brainstorm what we think is an innovative, interesting project, and how do we articulate that to the funding program.
And then in addition, in terms of like staff capacity, city staff capacity, I mean, if you had all 11 or these 7 programs go in, how does the city manage to kind of project manage all of these things at the same time?
So project delivery is something we take very close to heart. We have a great reputation in the region for delivering our projects, so we don't want to ask for too much and not be able to deliver. Several of these programs are programmatic in nature, which means it would fall to myself, Jason, or our other employee, Sarah, to either manage a consultant or take on personally. So we have that kind of capacity in the future. The construction projects, several of these we ask for construction-only dollars. We have engineering staff in place that can manage those and construction management staff that can manage those. We're fairly confident we can deliver everything if we get everything in.
Thank you.
Other questions?
Yeah, I had a question for Chris. The North Trail project, if we get the funding, what's the timing for completion?
Try to have all this stuff in my head, and that one seems to have escaped. I believe since we are already designing that, it will go quickly. So we could be, the design for that is wrapping up, and it's a little longer than normal because of the permitting issues along the front. We're using a flood corridor, and that gets complicated. But that could be constructed within 2 years. I believe it has to be constructed within 2 years with some of the funding we've used in the past.
Okay, that's great, because I use that trail a lot.
Yeah.
And then is there any planning north of that location, north of the Broderick boat ramp for trails that go, like, you know, basically you have a levee that continues beyond that point?
I believe this project will take it all the way to the rivers development up there now. So it will go beyond the boat ramp and adjacent to, I'm forgetting the name of the property, I refer to it as the Ethan Conrad property that is down there that kind of bridges between the boat ramp and I think some of the rivers property.
I think you have the
pond.
Indian Museum going in up there.
So that is a question mark as
Yeah.
well. So we don't have anything to design around for that project yet. It is only in concept, although there is state funding, but we don't know what's going to happen there yet. So we're trying to contemplate that as much as possible. In the conversations I've had, that part of that has always been looked at as maybe an access road to get into that facility when it is built. So we could double use some of those facilities if we have to.
Okay, thanks.
Other questions? Thank you, Chris.
Sure.
Item 5, Downtown Riverfront Streetcar Project Update. Mr. McCoy.
Again, Mr. Chair, members of the commission, Jason McCoy, Supervising Transportation Planner. We've had a number of items that have progressed on the streetcar project that I felt justified coming back to the commission to report on through the staff report, and also to kind of give a general overview of a few of these items that have happened with the project. Some of the most notable include the 100% design, engineering design for the project has been completed and is currently under review. We just had a public opening of the vehicle streetcar bids. To be clear, it's vehicle streetcar bid because we only had one company actually submit their final and best offer. Local company Siemens, who was one of the competitors, declined to submit a final and best offer. So the good news with that is that Brookville, who was the selected manufacturer, came in $2 million under budget. So we are very pleased with that progress. Also coming up in December, we're going to be bidding for the construction of the streetcar project. So that'll be hopefully in early to mid-December. And after that, we're expecting to coordinate with the FTA in order to receive our Small Starts Grant Agreement. If you have any questions, please feel free to ask. I'm going to go through some of the slides on the streetcar project as kind of a general overview, and I'm here to answer any questions after. So just a few things to highlight about the project. A lot of this is going to be review for you. The corridor alignment and the station locations have been set. Again, the 100% design has been completed. This is a 7.1-mile looped system with 21 stops and 27 platforms connecting West Sacramento Civic Center and City Hall through downtown Sacramento to Midtown at 19th Street and then circulating back. The loop system also splits off in West Sacramento between the Civic Center and Riverfront Street. So at Rayleigh Field, you'll have 15 to 20-minute headways, whereas all the way at City Hall and toward the barn, you'll have 30-minute headways at that split. So it's a little bit different over in West Sacramento than it is over in Sacramento because we have those two dead-end streets. This is a modern in-street running streetcar system. It is not a trolley. It is not a rubber tire vehicle. It is steel wheel, steel rail, and it is a modern streetcar. So there had been some previous questions about if this was going to be one of those antique or historic streetcar. It is not. This is going to be very modern and very 21st century. Also planned is a vehicle maintenance facility in the city of West Sacramento at the border of the Bridge District and Pioneer Bluff, and I'll get into that in a little more detail. So the overarching question that a lot of people ask is why streetcar? I've highlighted them here. Inspires connection between the two cities and two counties, promotes mobility, it enriches the passenger experience with easy travel. It actually can move a majority of people within the public right-of-way a lot more efficiently than individual automobiles. It's more sustainable and stimulates economic vitality. We have experience with this in other streetcar projects such as Kansas City that have moved forward, Salt Lake City, over in just about everywhere the streetcar project has moved forward, there's been significant economic development. This is the streetcar route map before you. This has not changed since the last time I brought it before the commission, highlighting again, extending between City Hall to Midtown and then looping back around and through the Bridge District. Excuse me. Very sensitive here. This is the operating plan. Again, it's 6 low-floor level boarding vehicles, so unlike the existing light rail vehicles that are out now that SAC-RT runs, you will not have to get up on a platform or step up onto stairs to get inside. Low floor means that at least, I believe that we had spec'd out 60% of the vehicle will have level boarding, so you could step right off of the sidewalk and into the streetcar vehicle, whereas, like I said, the RT, you have to actually climb stairs no matter what. This streetcar will operate 7 days a week, 7 a.m. to 11 p.m. There will be alternating times for weekends and holidays. And as I mentioned, there are going to be 27 stops between West Sacramento and Sacramento. One of the things that we did progress on was having a community outreach meeting surrounding the streetcar stations, and we received input from the public on station design. I had mentioned that one of our meetings here that the commission was welcome to attend. Councilman Ledesma was there, as well as Public Works Director Danik Zambia. We also had several people from West Sacramento community and the Sacramento community come see the different station concepts and provide some comments. The examples that I show here are 3 of the 4 that were shown. The hybrid, the diamond, which is a little bit more modern and a literal interpretation. There was also an even more modern concept that was shown. We received comments from everybody, and we're looking at responding to comments and coming back with more refined station concepts to City Council, as well as the Commission in the future. One of the things to note also is that regarding the station types, I did come before this commission and I went before the council to describe the different station concepts from the destination station, which is the largest station concept with the most amenities, down to a neighborhood station with no canopy and minimal amenities. Those were mapped out. One of the directions from the city council was to make sure that only the level 2 community stations were provided. So every station in West Sacramento will receive a canopy and have some sort of minimum public art, some lighting features, as well as general wayfinding and passenger information. I had brought up the maintenance facility. This is a 22,000 square foot facility that can handle both heavy maintenance as well as just general cleanup of the streetcars, circulate them back out and send them back into the field. It's also a location to store the vehicles. After a lot of discussion back and forth, there were 2 different alternatives that were brought forward in the environmental document, one in Sacramento, one in West Sacramento, and it was generally selected that West Sacramento be the site from both cities because of the convenience of being right at the tail end of Riverfront Street. Very little, actually no deadheading of the streetcar, which means running empty to get to a facility, maintenance facility, which actually increases operations and maintenance costs and wear and tear on the vehicle. The facility itself is intended to be more modern, to fit into the design criteria of the Bridge District. It would be located substantially underneath the right-of-way for US 50. However, on direction of Caltrans, no buildings, permanent occupiable buildings, can be located underneath the right-of-way because that is a fracture-critical bridge. So they have to have access in order to inspect the bridge. Fracture-critical is just a terminology for the type of bridge, so it needs to be inspected on a regular basis. The actual building itself is going to be located just outside of the right-of-way of US 50, and we had a design charrette that was held with the City of Sacramento, West Sacramento, SAC-RT, Public Works staff of both cities, as well as a design consultant with extensive experience in developing these maintenance facilities. Most recently, they did one in Charlotte, which I believe that's what the representation is there. We were able to come up with a plan that would work for both the operator, which is on contract RT, as well as the cities for the design and the expectations for parking the fleet, both now and in the future. Governance of the project is actually under authority of the Riverfront Joint Powers Authority. That consists of Vice Mayor Steve Hansen over in Sacramento and Councilman Harris, and over on our side, Mayor Christopher Cabalden and Councilmember Chris Ledesma. There is a 5th seat that has not yet been occupied, and the JPA is looking to fill that seat. I believe it was on the last agenda, but it may be pushed off into this next meeting that's going to be occurring this month, actually. The Joint Powers Authority actually is going to be governing the streetcar. There has been a number of documents that went before the City Council 2 meetings ago, which lay out the authority of the authority, as well as how the operations and maintenance is going to be handled, the contracts for the design and construction of the streetcar, as well as the operation, which, as I mentioned, is going to be Sacramento Regional Transit. So the project schedule, I had mentioned the governance documents did go before council. They were approved. We have completed the 100% design plans, and we are looking to obtain the grant agreement in February 2019. We cannot start construction. We cannot move forward with this project until the FTA has formally approved the project for funding through the SSGA, Small Stars Grant Agreement. At this point, we believe it will be coming to us in February, although the latest figures that I heard yesterday were that it could be extended into the end of March of 2019. But I'm very hopeful that we'll be able to convince FTA that we are ready to go. We are looking at beginning construction mid-2019. As soon as we receive the grant agreement, we will be sending off, we will have already gone to bid for the construction, and we will give a notice to proceed to both the vehicle contractor, Brookfield, as well as whoever the selected construction consultant is going to be. We believe that we'll be able to stay on schedule based on our expectations for the contractor to perform work, and we'll be able to begin service in mid-2022. That, however, is flexible depending on whether or not utility relocations from some of our partners out there like PG&E and AT&T, they have to remove and relocate their facilities as well. There's also going to be a substantial amount of outreach that's going to have to take place in the city of Sacramento as well as West Sacramento during construction for businesses. Since we are using the streetcar in some of the most congested areas, there are going to be some significant impacts during construction, and we'll have to allow for that. Project funding, we have a substantial amount of project funding. However, the contribution from Sacramento County that was previously committed by the county has not yet materialized. The county has not moved forward with providing that funding that was previously allocated. We are currently, right now, the Sacramento Regional Transit Board is meeting, and we have requested additional funding, $3.5 million, to float some additional funding through Prop 1A until we get the Small Stars Grant Agreement. The expectation was that we were to receive a Small Stars Grant Agreement about a year and a half ago. So the two cities have been working to continue to float additional cash, and at this point, we are looking to our other partners to do the same until we receive the grant agreement from the FTA. Unfortunately, this administration has been extremely slow and extremely reticent to provide any funding or any authorizations for transit projects in particular. So we are just rolling with the punches and hoping that the Federal Transit Administration moves a little bit faster than they have. There are potential risks. As I had mentioned, utility relocation is one of those risks. It does have a risk to both the schedule and the budget, should there be some delays in any utility relocations from some of our partners out there. City of Sacramento has stated their intent to credit their contribution against other activities related to the streetcar project, like construction. So that may wind up becoming a budget shortfall. One of those projects is the Riverfront Reconnect over in Sacramento that connected Old Town Sacramento with Capitol Mall. That leaves, I believe, about a $2.5 million shortfall in Sacramento's contribution. We are working with them to help them be successful in allocating additional money to the project. There's also significant construction, as I mentioned, in the commercial districts that are going to require extensive outreach, which may result in some project delays, but we'll do our best to overcome that. The big thing that we have our sights set on is the market conditions for streetcar bids like construction have actually been coming in higher than anticipated. However, we are very heartened with our most recent bid being under budget. We feel that we have actually estimated the project budget for this pretty spot on. So we're feeling pretty confident, but you never know. Market conditions such as tariffs, which increase the cost of steel, could prove to be a big problem for us, and we're working to overcome those things. So if you have any questions, please feel free to ask, and I'll do my best to answer them.
Questions from the commission?
I'll start. Can you, I know that Sacramento failed in its ability to get like property owner tax assessments put on. What was the update? What was final? And does that have any effect on the project, or did it have an effect on the project?
It definitely had an effect on the project. There were a few things that had changed. So going back into history, there were, as two partner agencies, an agreement that was made with 2/3 of the track being in the city of Sacramento and 1/3 of the track being in the city of West Sacramento, that the city of West Sacramento would be responsible for $25 million of the project, and the city of Sacramento would be responsible for $75 million of the project, and that we would ask for another $100 million from the federal government, which is the max that you can ask for from the Federal Transit Administration in matching funds, for a total of $200 million for the project. This does not include the $8.5 roughly million in early project development, preparing the EIR and doing preliminary design work, going out for community outreach, some of the local votes that were garnered in order to get this project moving forward. The city of West Sacramento did very well in early funding allocation through Measure V and Measure U. That was the vote for allocating $25 million to the streetcar project through Measure V, and then Measure U asked if we should use the funding that was garnered from Measure V for streetcar and flood control improvements. That was also a yes vote. So in 2008, so November 2008, we secured our funding. In addition to that, the Bridge District property owners formed CFD 27, which allocated another $10 million for an extension of streetcar down Riverfront Street, for a total of $35 million allocated from the city of West Sacramento. Of the $75 million that needed to come from the city of Sacramento, they were unable to get the first successful vote in order to get those funds. What they did was they sought out grant funding and other sources in order to make up the $75 million from Sacramento. In addition to that, it was determined by property owners in Sacramento that in order to move forward with streetcar, they would need to relocate light rail service from K Street to H Street, which would require another $20 million in streetcar improvements to make that happen. So what wound up happening was the county of Sacramento said, we will give you $3 million toward the project. The city of Sacramento said, well, we can, their council said we can allocate $7 million toward the project. Then they sought out, with the help of City of West Sacramento and SACOG, funding through TIRCP, that's the Transit Intercity Rail Capital Improvement Program. That TIRCP allowed them to get additional $30 million in cap and trade funds. So we were very successful in that. In addition to that, Regional Transit said, well, because you're doing this K to H Street relocation, we can use Proposition 1A funds. So that allowed them another, I believe, $25 million in Proposition 1A funds. That kind of scattered some things around because we were able to come up with additional funding. They were able to come up with some different funding. It turned out to be $65 million that they needed to our $35 million. And in addition to that, they were able to go out to a vote for operations and maintenance funding. And that was the latest vote that was actually successful, where the property owners got together and they approved an assessment of their own properties to cover O&M. City of Sacramento is going to be, or West Sacramento is using other funds in order to come up with our operations and maintenance, which will be $1 million annually, and City of Sacramento is $2 million annually. So at this point in time, most of the funding has been secured by both parties here, both cities. But there are some holes in it, and that would be the city, or Sacramento County's $3 million allocation, and any missing funds from the City of Sacramento's allocation. So we are working to make sure that our partners live up to what they had intended to provide. And as I said, Sacramento Regional Transit is meeting now. I should have an update at some point tonight as to whether or not the additional money required to float the project until we get our Small Stars grant agreement is going to be approved. I feel pretty confident that it will.
And is there any Yolo County funds that are coming in to this, or do they have any?
No, Yolo
Okay.
County has been at the table. They have been participating in all of our project development team meetings. They are on all the conference calls. However, there is no actual funding that's being provided by YCTD. But because we are going to be working with them for transitioning transit, so, any transfers that come in from our transit center here in town will go to streetcar. There may be some fare reduction. They're at the table as partners in this.
Okay, great. Thank you for that history and fascinating about funding. I appreciate that.
No problem.
Any other questions?
Thank you for your presentation. I think very exciting to have it back on track, I think. So it is largely dependent on the federal grant, and I know it's been held up because of that. And you've said that you're pretty confident it's going to get approved and the agreement will be in place. What could potentially hold that up? And I guess why is it being held up right now?
I could speculate a wide variety of reasons why it's held up. I can tell you that over the process of the last year and a half or so, we have been working with the FTA in order to secure the Small Starts Grant Agreement. There have been a lot of conversations. There has been a general consensus, and some of the federal lobbyists that work for both cities have submitted letters and inquiries as to why all transit projects in the country are being slow-rolled. And we're not exactly sure why. We haven't received a lot of feedback. We have received, though not documented, in written or in emails, we have received verbal confirmation from the FTA that it's not just a matter of if, it's just when we receive the grant agreement. We do know that $50 million of the $100 million that is requested was allocated previously through the Obama administration. So that has been sitting there and just waiting for the remaining portion, because it is not the normal practice of the FTA to just give part of your funding and leave you with a half-finished project. They want to make sure that you have fully received the funding. So because that money has been sitting there, the expectation all along has been that this administration would follow what past administrations have done and fully fund a project that has already received previous authorization. So we're just waiting at this point. We have fulfilled all of the obligations. You may have seen some articles in the Bee that came out asking why these projects are getting held up. And to be honest, we just don't have a response. The response from the FTA, official response, is that we had not fulfilled all of our obligations. However, we have fulfilled all of our obligations. So we'll just have to see what happens.
Okay, thank you.
Anyone else? Thank you, Jason.
All right, thank you.
Number 6, the next meeting is in, looks like 3 weeks, Monday, October 1st. Reports from the city staff. Gentlemen.
We do have a report from the city staff. Actually, it was requested at the last Transportation Mobility Infrastructure Commission meeting that an update on bike share and scooter share were to be presented. There wasn't a lot of information in order to document this in an agenda report. However, Chris has been kind enough to provide an update on the work in progress.
All right. So we launched the bike share fleet, the Jump bike share fleet, in May of this year. We launched with a kind of a reduced number of bikes, 300 at first. We saw probably the highest rides per bike rollout that Jump in their 10-year history had ever seen. They were so popular. We got some data from last week when we, at the end of August, we had hit over 100,000 trips through the 3 cities. That's Sacramento, West Sacramento, and Davis. The rollout since May has had some challenges, and they were kind of for a couple different reasons. One is in the middle of their rollout, they were being acquired by Uber. That normally would be a good thing, but they were in the middle of a hiring freeze due to the acquisition process as they were trying to staff up to roll out. Plus, they underestimated the Sacramento market slightly, and we had over 3 times the ridership than they expected. So that did is most of the bikes that were on the street were probably not accessible because they still need to be charged. And at 25% charge, these things shut off, saying they're not available for rent. So it created a lot, there was clearly a lot more demand than was anticipated. I said at the end of last month, we hit over 100,000 trips throughout the region, which is a pretty amazing amount so far. This week, we actually broke 20,000 weekly trips for the first time. So the bikes are being used a lot more than we expected. We're getting the general measure of success for a bike share system historically has been about 3 rides per bike per day, and we between 2 and 3. We have been hitting between 6 to 8 per rides per bike per day. And we anticipate as they keep including more and more bikes, we currently have about 700 bikes in the regional fleet, that number will drop, but so far it really has not. So at some point we will find, somewhere on that supply and demand curve where we have so many bikes in the system that the trips per bike are reducing. But as of right now, they will keep adding bikes until we find that point. We have at this point we have over 3,000 first-time riders last week, which is pretty impressive. We have, so there is the Boost program and a student program, which are the equity affordable programs, and then for students. At this point, we have just over 100 people enrolled in the Boost program and over 500 in the student program, which makes sense because 2 of our partners on this project are UC Davis and CSUS, Sac State. So they are actively targeting their enrollees there. Total trips keep increasing by about 30%, according to the last data we've gotten. And actually, on August 17th, there were over 3,300 rides in one day, which I believe was a Friday. So they are, if you're out seeing them around, you'll see them being used. Really, what I love is a diverse group of people out there using them, moving around the city. It's been really pretty successful so far. We actually far eclipsed San Francisco's numbers in our first month of launch. Do you have any questions?
Yeah, I had a question. We also had bikes before the Jump program, right? We had green bikes.
The white social bicycle bikes?
Yeah, so I'm a little
Non-powered.
confused. We've had different programs, almost like they're experimental. Like here, one starts and then it disappears, and then another one starts, and I assume it's going to continue. So I was
Sure.
curious about the length of time of these programs and what the arrangements are.
Yeah, it would appear that way, and I understand that perception. In May of 2017, we launched, we're calling the Tower Bike Share Preview, and that was approximately 100 non-powered bikes through a company called Social Bicycles. Social Bicycles is Jump. They rebranded when they designed and produced an electric assist bike. So they are taking all of their systems, and they've been around for about 10 years in 30 to 50 cities internationally. So while it seems like they're different systems and they are different bikes, they are the exact same system, just a rebranding and a new bike with new kit. And those white bikes are still in the region, although we're trying to figure out if there's other ways we can use them, but they're currently sitting. Oh, and the other piece I didn't mention, as Jump was looking for a regional location for an operational warehouse here, they were looking for a small warehouse to build the bikes and get them ready and charge and do the daily operations and maintenance. They ended up leasing a 30,000 square foot facility on Del Monte, and they, with the additional funding they're getting from the Uber acquisition, they have converted that into their North American distribution center for all of their systems. Every bike that comes into the US to get assembled for their systems goes through that location for assembly, and then is shipped out, and then also operated here, which makes that facility actually probably one of the best manned facilities in the bike share system nationwide.
Well, I certainly am among those statistics. I've ridden all over the place. They're great fun. As long as they're charged.
Right.
I just had a quick question. Has there been a lot of vandalism or theft? I was riding in this morning and I saw one just kind of smashed up on the side of the street.
I know of two that have been stolen that have been returned because they are so easy to see. We had one of the GPS units had been cut off and was returned to me, so there was a free-range jump bike out there running around without its GPS unit. And a few days later, I actually saw it on the street and called our police department, and they had recovered it within about 30 minutes. So they're, due to the nature and that proprietary nature of that bike, it's really, I think after a learning curve, people will realize they're really not, there's no point in stealing them. They're just readily available, and there's so many around. So, but vandalism, not so much that I've heard, but just to that, and this is just in our jurisdiction. I don't know what the issues are in Sacramento. So.
Vince?
The last question related to her question is kind of bike facilities, because you see them kind of left everywhere. And there was an article, I believe, recently in the News and Review, or maybe the SAC-B, about people are leaving them in the middle of sidewalks. They're creating some pedestrian conflicts. Is that the next phase, is to not only improve the charging capability, but more facilities, more identifiable locations, or just bike racks or something where you can leave them? So, because they're pretty much all over the place.
Yeah, so we're getting a lot of reports of them, especially in residential neighborhoods where there's not a lot of parking facilities, locked up against a stop sign, things like that. Even in my neighborhood, Lime Park, they're all over my street. Not so much blocking pedestrian movement. I've heard that complaint a little bit in the downtown area. We have had less of an issue here in West Sacramento. I am not getting those complaints, and I'm the point person for this. We are moving, and we've been talking about shifting the model back to an incentive-based model to get them back to the hubs. There's a lot of reasons to do this from an operational standpoint. As we start rolling out charging hubs, which they are coming, that will lessen the need for a vehicle to drive around, pick the bikes up, and take them back. They'll move to a charging hub and probably be moving throughout the system and be able to be charged up on the street. So we'll probably be moving to more an incentive base there. When it comes to just adding additional bike parking facilities, we are in the process of adding probably 15 more hubs in West Sacramento and we're overbuilding our hub facilities here, primarily because we have a natural deficiency of just general bike parking. So we are using this as an opportunity to really significantly increase our public bike parking as well. So those will be coming as they move more back to the hub environment that they were designed for. Traditionally, we're hearing this from our other partner cities, we're kind of still in that first phase of the community learning how to use this, and there's a little bit of a period of bad behavior, not knowing, as some people would call it. As they get normalized and people see the peer group out there using it, how they're supposed to be using it, because we're getting complaints about riding on the sidewalk and things of that nature in different jurisdictions, not so much over here. we expect those to be kind of trailing off as we can kind of get out and do more outreach and find out, because, I mean, bike riding on the sidewalk is an issue, especially in the downtown area. But I think as they start building out more of their bike infrastructure in the downtown area, that'll be less and less an issue. Generally, I consider sidewalk riding a good indicator of that you need better bike facilities in the street, because people are generally not feeling comfortable riding on the street if they're riding on the sidewalk.
Any other questions? Thank you, Chris.
I did have some information on the scooters as well, which was also
Oh,
part of
sure.
the question. I just wanted to make sure we didn't confuse the two, because that can happen. As you might remember, I believe it was in March or April of this year, we brought an item to you and took it also to council, authorizing our city manager to enter an agreement with Lime E, a electric scooter share operator. That was very early in scooters kind of coming onto the public consciousness. We did pursue that, and council did authorize our city manager to pursue that. Shortly after, we kind of paused that a little bit, as there was a fair amount of publicity about some of the issues coming out with these. So we decided to step back a little bit and work with the operator and figure out if there was a way that we could address some of the issues we were hearing about. That, coupled with the city manager transition, kind of, it got put on pause for a few months. So we are actively now in negotiations with Lime to bring in scooters into the city. We don't have any confirmed dates, and we don't have anything locked down as of yet. I'll happy to notify you when we do get more information. And there's a couple of reasons where I think I'm glad that we can kind of pause, because the city of Sacramento in that timeframe had also effectively banned scooters from operations within their jurisdiction. And so to have them in West Sacramento, the natural inclination will be to cross the river back and forth. And we didn't want to put a company in position to be immediately impounded if they went across the river. So we felt it was probably better to step back and take a look at that. As we are hearing now, Sacramento is reversing their stance on these, but looking at their regulatory framework moving forward, and they're exploring that now. So you will probably be seeing scooters in both jurisdictions probably in the next 3 to 4 months. That's a back a napkin kind of timeline.
Questions about the scooters? Thank you.
Sure.
Any other reports? Any requests for future agenda items by the board? Hearing none, I make a motion to adjourn. Do I have a second?
Second.
Seconded. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
We are done.